Welcome to the Soul Forge, a place of silent mystery, quiet contemplation, and outright mayhem. Join your host, Sean Vanderloo, as he guides you through the adventures of living. Together, we'll talk about life and love, sex and dating, joy and heartache, memories and loss, and so much more. Don't worry, it's not nearly as pretentious as it sounds. Get ready for life, the universe, and everything on the Soul Forge.
Hey folks, it's Sean here with episode 42 of Soul Forge Podcast. Today we are bringing you a special episode all about life, the universe, and everything. This is episode 42, and if you'll recall from the movie, the television series, the radio program, the book series, the number 42 comes from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the answer to the ultimate question. And of course, my expert on The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is Paul, also known on Twitter as Furbob. You've heard him on previous episodes of the podcast. He was my co-host on the Sci-Fi Waffle podcast. And what you're about to hear is an episode recorded earlier in the week where we talked about the meaning of 42. We talked about the meaning of life, and we also talked a little bit about Stephen Hawking, plus a few other random things here and there. So stay tuned for episode 42, Life, the Universe, and Everything. Here it is.
In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the supercomputer Deep Thought is built by a race of hyper-intelligent alien beings to determine the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Deep Thought determines that the answer is somewhat anticlimactically 42. It sounds like a joke, but is there more to this answer? Douglas Adams was an unabashed computer nerd and knew a heck of a lot about programming language and coding. In programming, an asterisk is commonly used to translate as whatever you want it to be. In ASC2 language, the most basic computer software, 42 is the designation for an asterisk. A computer, Deep Thought, was asked what the true meaning of life was. It answered as a computer would, 42. Anything you want it to be. So that's what I came up with here. That's the quote that I found. And since this is episode 42, and you are my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy expert, what are your thoughts about that, Paul?
Yeah, I think that's too many people reading stuff into it. I think Douglas Adams is becoming the new William Shakespeare. You basically are told what to think and you know how you should think about his work and all this type of thing, instead of just reading the book and getting on with it. I have heard that, I've seen that quote. I don't think it's right.
Okay.
Because The Hitchhiker's Guide was written in 1977 and then so I said 1977. It was a radio series in 1978, so it was written around 1977. I don't know how many people had computers at that time, and whether he would have known about that much about it, about the coding and things.
Because I guess they might have had that coding language back then. They must have, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But whether he knew about it or not, he was very much a typewriter guy. He wrote a lot of scripts for television programs and things in the 60s and 70s. Some of the Monty Python sketches. So whether he would have known about computers or not, I don't know. I mean, I think I should have got my book down from the loft in anticipation for this, but I have got the copies of the radio scripts, and there were notes written in there by him, of which he, I'm sure, mentioned. Somebody asked him about 42, and he said it was just a made-up number. So I don't think he's secretly putting codes into his work. It was just something he rewrote, and then wrote again 10 minutes before it went out on air. So I don't think he was thinking too hard about the number. So
it might have just been a coincidence.
Oh yes, more than likely. I mean, if you look into any of his work, you can find something that will be a coincidence somewhere, but people will attribute it to a meaningful thing. Somebody on a recent podcast I heard tried to find out what day Douglas Adams actually had the Vogons arriving at the planet, because there are certain clues in the script and in the book about what day that would have been. So you can take, for example, the fact that it was a Thursday, because Arthur Dent couldn't get the hang of Thursdays.
Mm-hmm, right, I remember that.
So that narrows it down right away to so many thousand possibilities. The the year that it was written, the price of beer. He goes into a pub and he orders 6 pints of beer, and when he pays for it with, I think it's £5, the barman, he says keep the change to the barman, and the barman's very surprised to get keep the change from a fiver. My goodness, that's a lot of money that you're giving me as a tip. So if you are buying 6 pints of beer for under £5, then it could only be within something like 1972 to 1980 something or other.
Okay.
So that sort of puts it within there. So there's only those Thursdays from in between that two period. He mentions about a football game, a soccer match, and he mentions that Arsenal, the football team, are going to play a game that afternoon. Now, to be playing a game on Thursday, especially in the 1970s, is very, very rare. It's not a league game. They were always played at the weekends. European Cup games and even some of the the knockout games, the FA Cup and all that, were midweek. So you can narrow it down. They actually found 3 Thursdays that would have applied to that to that sort of thing. Plus the fact it was in the afternoon, and so it implied, are you going to watch the game? And it wouldn't have been on television more than likely. And if it was, then it was going to be late in the evening. So Arthur Dent lived somewhere in Somerset, from the description of the town and what have you. So if Arsenal were playing, they'd more than likely be playing at home in London. There is a game that they were playing on a particular Thursday, so you would have had to have travelled from Somerset to London, which is a couple of 100 miles or so. That's going to take him a bit of time. So it all sort of ties into this one particular date. I can't remember what particular date that was, but all this reasoning behind it was all based on the books, not on the radio series. The radio series came first, and the radio series, some of the arguments they were using for finding that were not available in the radio series. Plus the fact I think he was miscalculating his price of beer, because the guys, he said, you can get so many pints of beer for under £5 and a bit of a tip. But I think no, the guy was very surprised at getting such a huge tip that it would have to have been less than £4. So therefore, I think his prices were wrong. They reckon that the date that Vogons arrived was somewhere in 1982.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of research.
It's 4 years after. It's a lot of working out, and I think a lot of it was flawed. And I think Douglas Adams, not knowing much about football, didn't think that Arsenal would have been playing on a Thursday. It was just something he made up again on the fly, half an hour before he was trying to get his script together and get it out on the radio.
So that basically leaves us with the idea that the answer to the meaning of life is arbitrary, and it's what you want it to be.
Exactly. It's a comedy sketch written by a guy who had a great sense of humour and an incredible imagination, plucking things out of the air. And although there is a story now, if you remember the Hitchhiker's Guide, there is a part which says that there was a woman who was having a cup of coffee in a cafe in Rickmansworth, and she discovered the answer to life. That it would be perfect. It was going to make everybody happy, and it was going to work. It was she got it right. It was perfect. It was brilliant. And then the world ended when the Vogons blew her up. Ironically, John Lloyd, who was a co-writer of the Hitchhiker's Guide, and he was a big friend of Douglas Adams, and he helped him get the books together and finish the books off, because Douglas Adams was useless at deadlines. He said his famous quote was, "Deadlines, I love the sound as they go whizzing by."
Yes, I remember that.
So he couldn't finish the book, so John Lloyd helped him finish the books, and he said that Douglas Adams came up to him one time, and this was after he'd written the radio series and before he got the books together, and he said it was after he got all the books together, and he was thinking of putting it into a TV series, into a film, I beg your pardon. He'd done the TV series and he was going to put it into a film. And he said he'd had a thought about life, the universe and everything, and he'd come up with a couple of ideas that he thought would really change the world and would make it a much better place to live in. It would be, peace would be guaranteed, people's finances would be, easily fixed. And John Lloyd sort of looked at him and went, yes. Oh, okay, Douglas, go back home, have a cup of tea. 2 months later, Douglas Adams died.
Oh, jeez.
So he says it was either a very poetic justice that he died after saying exactly the same thing his character did in the book. Whether he did know it or whether he did know it, he will never know, because he never told him. So He's probably the only man who had the idea that we could solve all our problems, and he died 2 months later without writing it down.
Isn't that the way it always goes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hitchhiker's Guide started out as a radio play.
That's right.
Then it became a TV series, a 6-part.
I think it was books then or a book and then the TV series.
Then the TV series, and then he wrote the sequels.
That's right.
And then it became the somewhat not so great film from 2004, I believe.
That's right. There was because there've been. Oh, I'm trying to think now. There was yes, that's right, because they did the film, which was awful attempt at it. It was when you've already done the TV series and you've got the characters there, and most of them were the actual characters from the radio show, so the voices were correct.
Yeah.
Their acting was correct. They all knew the characters, and then you ditch all of them, and you try and use more famous people or people, contemporary people, the actors of their time. If you've read the books, then it's probably not too bad. But if you've listened to the radio series and you've heard all the voices and you know what they sound like, to then put it into a film, it was wrong in every way. Marvin didn't look right. He was, supposed to be more robotic than that. He was a round object instead of a 1950s type robot, which the TV series had him as. I from memory, I think, was it Zaphod Beeblebrock's character only had one head, and he's actually supposed to have two?
In the movie, he has two heads, but not at the same time. It flips over or something.
Yeah, you see, that's just poor. I mean, in the TV series, they had a guy with the actual actor who played him in the radio series, but with an animatronic head on the side.
Okay.
So, it was always there. Or it was a dummy head, in some places. But he had two heads all the time, which is exactly what he was supposed to have. 3 arms as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
So, exactly. So it's just... Yeah, it was just wrong in every way, and a lot of the people who were in the original radio series, or even the TV series, had died, including the guy who did the voice of the book. So no matter what voice they used for the book later on, the continuity had gone, and it wasn't right.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a wholly remarkable book. Perhaps the most remarkable, certainly the most successful book ever to come out of the great publishing corporations of Ursa Minor. More popular than the Celestial Home Care Omnibus, better selling than 53 More Things to Do in Zero Gravity, and more controversial than Oolon Kalufid's trilogy of philosophical blockbusters, Where God Went Wrong, Some More of God's Greatest Mistakes, and Who Is This God Person Anyway? It's already supplanted the Encyclopedia Galactica as the standard repository of all knowledge and wisdom for 2 important reasons. First, it's slightly cheaper, and second, it has the words "Don't Panic" printed in large, friendly letters on its cover.
They used Stephen Fry at one point, who I thought would have done a decent job of it, but just didn't sound right somehow. They later on they went, and they've done it again, but they increased the radio series from 2 seasons to 5. And they used some of the original actors and brought in some new ones, obviously, to fill the places where people couldn't either passed away or couldn't make it. And it went very bizarre and very weird after that. And they recently, for the 40th anniversary, did it again.
Oh, what, really? Okay, I didn't know that.
And they went up to, is it the hexagonal phase? I think it was. So they've done either another series or a special one-off show. I can't remember. I haven't listened to it because I heard the adverts for it and it was awful. So a lot of the same actors, but and again it just doesn't work. It's written by other people, and I don't think the humour's right. It's not what Douglas Adams was about. There is more Douglas Adams in the TV show Dirk Gently than there is in the Hitchhiker's Guide films and what have you.
And I've read the Dirk Gently books, and I've also read the entire Hitchhiker's Guide series, the trilogy in 5 parts, at least twice, maybe 3 times.
Yes.
And yourself, you must have read it quite a bit.
Right, I've read it once. I've read the first 2 once. Now, the problem I had at the time is they are not in the same order as the radio series. And I don't think they're in the same order as the TV series. What he did is he sat down after he'd done the radio series and spent time on the book with John Lloyd, putting it all together how he wanted it to be. Now, the problem was that meant certain things went out of order. So what I did is I bought the 2 books, I started reading them and thought, no, hang on, this is all in the wrong order. So I chopped the books up and rearranged them.
Like you actually took the pages out?
Yeah, I cut the whole thing up and then glued it all back together in the order of the radio series.
Wow.
That's how fanatical I am about the radio series, because it everything's there. It's the actors, the sound effects, your imagination to believe what it is. The book, like I said, when I read it in the early 80s, I just couldn't get hold of it because it was in the wrong order. The humor was phenomenal. It was brilliant. It was brilliantly written.
It's hilarious.
It is all the funny stories, the jokes, and the puns, and his outlook on life and his little quips at things. Fantastic. But I couldn't get over the fact it was in the wrong order. I've sort of half thought about reading it again soon and giving it a proper read. Now that I'm a bit older, a bit more mature, I can put up with the fact it's not in the right order, because I want to get that experience of his full. The full journey, the full, his outlook on life, his looking at certain aspects of life and that. So, I might just read that this year, and I need to. Once I've done that, I will then listen to the radio series again, because that's it's the 40th year this year of it, so I need to listen to it.
Now, if my memory serves me, you actually did a several-part series, or at least a one-part series, on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as a midweek supplemental for the Rusted Robot podcast, did you not?
I did. I can't remember what episode it was. It was one of the early ones, but I did do, it was about 20 minutes, half an hour or so, précis of the actual radio series, yes.
I'm looking for that now in the archives of Rusted Robot, and I can't find it, but...
I think it's somewhere around 13, is it, I think? I'm not too sure. I'd have to go back and look. It is one of the early ones.
Oh, found it. Here it was. October 1st, 2014, Rivets Ready Room number 7, the 1978 original release of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Meet Furbob, a.k.a. Paul Wright from the 10 Forward podcast. Learn the history of Douglas Adams' seminal work, and we play a promo for the 10 Forward podcast. So that was way back in October 2014.
Really?
Yeah, and that
2014.
And that episode's still available for download. And any listener to this episode here on SoulForge can go back and listen to the archives of the Rusted Robot.
Wow, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's almost 4 years ago. That's crazy.
Wow, yes. Wow, that just shows how long we've known each other then, because that was not long after we'd sort of, that would have been that year, wouldn't it? So it would have been the January of that year. I think we got together and had a chat at some point, didn't we?
Yep, because we started the podcast in January of 2014. I'm looking through the archives. Episode 42, we actually called it Life, the Universe, and Everything. That was September, just before you did your thing there.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the episodes actually was called Afternoon Tea with Paul, so
mm-hmm.
where we had our audience meet you. So
yeah.
So you've been on my podcasts for quite a while. Here it is, episode 36, Morning Coffee and Afternoon Tea with Furbob, August 10th, 2014.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about Stargate, Star Trek, Doctor Who, MacGyver, Arrow, BSG, Lost in Babylon 5. We found out what a Furbob is. And we had a shout out to fellow podcasters.
Wow.
So that was like a 3-hour call we had, and I had to whittle it down to like an hour and a half, if I remember correctly.
I know, yeah, we did go on a long time. You guys were eating breakfast, and I was eating lunch.
Yes, I think that's why we called it morning coffee, afternoon tea. That's right, because we have 4 or 5 hours of time difference here, so.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. So my question to you, Paul, what do you think the meaning of life is?
Now, this is where I get all scientific and logical. Rather than romantic and philosophical, because the whole point of life is to reproduce and carry on being.
Yes.
So to me, that's what life is about. It's about surviving as long as you can and making sure that you leave your legacy behind you, which is generally your children, and you leave them in a good position if you can. Other than that, if you want to put it in the context of whilst you're around doing that, then really you need to be the best person you can be.
Okay. Self-actualization and increasing the joy and happiness of the human species?
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Or is that too woo-woo?
Yeah. That's far too deep.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, just to be the idea, you got to be the best person you can. You then so that the next generation look up to you and see how to act and behave and carry on in that same vein. Whilst you're doing that, have as much fun as you can. And basically, I mean, the way I would sum up the way I feel, the way I try and be, and it is almost a quote from the Bible, but it's very much, do unto others as you would have them do unto you is the actual quote. And it basically treat people how you want to be treated back. And if they don't, well, that's tough. But in general, it's always to put me in good stead. You just, if you're a decent person, if you're a good person, then you will have a good set of friends, and good things will happen to you. Not all the time, but in general, that's the way my life has been. I can't complain too much about what's happened through my life. It's been as good or as bad as anybody else's, but in general, I've got good people around me. People think I'm a decent guy, and that's pretty much what I ask for. So the meaning of what is the actual meaning of life to me is that's what it's all about. Life in general is just about, well, life just carries on. None of us will be here in 2 million years' time. It'll all be gone.
Right.
So we're just a blot on the landscape. We're just a little flick and a little speck of dust in a massive universe.
That's true. So basically, if I were to sum up your words, have kids, have fun, do no harm, and then you'll be gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. That's really all life is. I mean, other people will look into it and see other things, but to me, it is what it is. It only lasts so long. The older you get, the realize that the more you realize that I am closer to the point where I'm going to die than I was the point where I was born. So I've got less time on this planet now, and it's far too late to be thinking, oh well, I wish I'd done this 20 years ago or whatever. Do it now. Whatever you want to do it now. Get on with it. Enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, stop it. Do something else.
And live your life with no regrets.
That's hard to do, but yes.
At least try.
Yes.
And see what you just said there reminded me of the Captain Picard quote from Star Trek Generations, where he says, "Lately, it's come to my mind that there's more days behind me than there are days ahead of me."
Yes.
And even when I first heard that when I was like 18 or whatever I was, that always stuck with me. It's like, huh, wow.
It is. It's a frightening thought when I mean, I'm 53 now, so obviously I have got to the point where I've got less in front of me than I have behind me. So I don't know when that point arrived, because obviously I don't know when I'm going to die. But let's say the average age over here is sort of mid 70s, so they reckon, but most people I know seem to be they've lived a lot longer than that. Into the 80s or 90s. My parents are still alive, and they're in their getting to their 80s now. So there's a fair chance I'll do the same thing. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, there's stuff that I really want. I should have done when I was younger and never did. I just wasted my time. I spent a lot of money on stuff that I didn't need.
I think a lot of us do that.
Yep. And so it's getting to the point now where I'm thinking, well, I want to try archery. So yeah, let's go and try archery then. So you go out and you do it. If I hadn't have done, I'd still be here in 20 years' time thinking, oh, I wonder what happened. I wonder what archery was like. I really would have liked to have given that a go.
And by the time you're 70, you'll be a little bit too old for that.
It's too late. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of archers there in our club that are at that age, and they're still doing it and they're still good at it. But I wish I'd started it when I was 18, because I'd be bloody good now, because I've only been doing it a year and a half and I'm already quite high up in the club and doing quite well. So. If I tried it earlier, maybe I would, I'd be better. But I can't regret that. I can't look back and say, well, that's a big regret, and I wish I'd done that. I'm doing it now. So.
Well, yeah, you have to, and that's the same with me. I'm 41 right now. In September, I'll be 42. I kind of wish this episode was coming out in September for my birthday. Episode 42. That would be awesome to have this conversation then.
Yeah.
But still, I'm in my 42nd year right now, so that's also pretty neat.
Yeah.
And I think, what? Am I at my halfway point? I don't know. Am I going to live to 84? Am I going to live? I want to live to 126. I want to make it to the year 2101. But is that feasible? Probably not.
Yeah, that's it. Well, it's something to aim for.
It is. It's been my goal for as long as I can remember. So.
Wow, I'd love to get to 100 because I was born in 1965, so therefore it'll be 2065.
Mm-hmm.
20, I beg your pardon, 20.
Yeah,
What did you
2060.
say then? 2065, yeah. And I'm fairly certain that 2065 was when Thunderbirds was set.
Ah, okay.
So I should be around to see it.
And that's also one of your favorite television shows.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. It was created in the same year that I was born.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going in one form or another, and I'd love to think that I was, I was alive in 1984 when obviously George Orwell's book was written about. Space 1999, the TV series. I've lived through that.
Yep.
So and what was the other one? UFO, I think, was another Jerry Anderson television series that was set in 1980.
Ah.
So I've lived through all of these things that have predicted these things will happen in the future, and none of it has. So I don't expect Thunderbirds to have happened by the time we get there, but it would be nice to get to it and think I lived to the year that they predicted.
Well, next year is 2019, in which the universe of Blade Runner takes place. Do you think we'll have robot bodies by then? Replicants?
Well, I tell you what, with the rate of technology at the moment, that's not it's not impossible.
It's true. It's not likely, but it's not impossible.
No, no. I mean, we've already got a lot of cyborgs walking around at the moment, so why wouldn't we have the full robot experience?
Hey, I like it. The full robot experience. It sounds like a band name. Or a really bad movie. I don't know.
Yeah. Or a very bad theme park.
There you go.
Westworld all over again.
Yes. I still have to watch that.
Yeah. The only way I could watch it now is probably on DVD.
That should be. Did that come out on DVD?
I should imagine it would do.
Yeah, I would think so.
I don't think it. Yeah, I mean everything else seems to have. So.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to ask you also, one of the smartest men that ever lived recently passed away. We lost Stephen Hawking on March 14th.
That's right.
And he was a citizen of the UK, was he not?
He was. Hard to tell by his accent, but.
Oh, that's bad. I like it.
Well, the funny thing is, a lot of people thought he was American.
Oh, really?
Because he used one of the very first answerphone machines. Was that voice synthesizer software was from one of them, but because it was based, it was used from an American company. That's the voice he had, and therefore that's the voice he kept. Because he always said he didn't want to change the voice because people were saying, why don't you just have a proper voice or a nicer voice or a British voice? And he said, because nobody would recognize me.
That's his trademark.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell from his voice that he was actually British. I did hear a quote from somebody in work who they were talking about various people and robots and things, and then somebody made a comment and he said, "Oh, you're just like the British Stephen Hawking." I thought, no, Stephen Hawking was British, you fool.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So was it a big deal over there? Like, because he was a citizen of the UK and you live in the UK, you're a citizen of the UK yourself. Was it all over the news, or was it just like another day in the life?
No, it was all over the news. Yeah, I mean, he was, very much revered and highly thought of, and he was still, he was obviously over here. He was still active and making comments on various things in life in general, and obviously the scientific community. So he was still active in that part. Everybody knew who he was because not just in the science community, but because he'd spread himself around. He had an amazing sense of humor. So he did a couple of things like The Simpsons, obviously, and he was in Star Trek as played himself. I think he's the only person to play himself in Star Trek.
Mm-hmm, it's true.
All right, so yeah. So there was that, and he had also done one of the comic relief shows over here where he'd done a little comedy sketch with that. So I mean, this amazing sense of humor really sort of endeared him to the general public. A lot of people had bought his book, A Brief History of Time. Most people famously have not read it or read it all the way through, but a lot of people did buy it
or understood it.
Yes, that's right. I mean, he said it was one of the most widely sold books that nobody's ever read. He was well known and well thought of, and an amazing person. I thought the film that came out, was it,
Theory of
what was it
Everything.
called? Theory of Everything. Yeah, that was an amazing film. It was, it really sort of captured his early life and and the the things he went through. It was set in a period of time, obviously but it was. Again, and that sort of brought him to more to the public attention as well. People realised what he had gone through and how long he'd been going through it as well. It was, a remarkable person, and there was again a couple of people had interviewed him. There was a comedian over here, an Irish comedian over here that had interviewed him, and he said Stephen Hawking said to him, he said, do you mind if I tell you a joke? And he said no, tell the joke. And he said, an electron, an electron, I can't even say it now, an electron walks into a hotel, goes up to the reception, and the receptionist says, would you like a room? He said, yes. He said, do you have any luggage? He says, no, I'm travelling light.
Nice.
You've got to be a bit of a scientist. That's a scientific joke.
Well, sure, yeah, because light is a particle. Yeah, of course.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, he had a great sense of humour, and like I say, I'm sure people haven't quite, a lot of the general public haven't quite realised that we've been living in an age of Einstein, if you like. Mm-hmm. Like, we all know Einstein. We all know he lived in the 1920s and 30s and what have you. But nobody that we really knew had lived while he was alive. I don't think we quite realised that in 100 years' time, people will be talking about Hawking in the same way as they do about Einstein.
Exactly.
And we've lived through that time. We've seen it. Mm-hmm. We've seen him come up with these ideas and theories and read his book and what have you. So it's quite an honour to have lived at the same time as him and been around while his theories were still being bandied around and played with.
Well, that's right, because Einstein, he died in 1955.
Uh-huh.
That's 10 years before you, 20 years before me. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And really, he was more active, like I say, in the 20s and 30s. So my grandfather would have been very young when he was, still, bringing out his theories and what have you. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he is remembered and what things of what equations and things are still going in the time. Will any of his? I mean, he famously came out with a few theories which he later then dismissed, which is what every scientist does. They always put theories out and wait for them to be broken down or dismissed or proven wrong or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of science.
Well, that's right.
So yeah, it would be interesting to see how his theories hold up over the years.
And who is his replacement? Is there anybody right now that you can think of that's doing the same kind of work, the same brilliance? I can't.
Well, no, I can't, and I think that's the problem. A lot of science, it takes us one of these scientists who have a bit of charisma or a bit of something about them. Einstein, obviously, he was very popular at the time, and he did a few things that sort of brought him into the public eye as well as just being a scientist and what have you. Richard Feynman was the same. He got on TV a couple of times. His lectures have become well known, and people have started talking about him, saying this guy's a real wacky guy, but he can explain things in such a simple way, and his theories of string theory and all this type of thing. He was another one who became well known and famous for what he did off the camera than really what he was doing. He did a couple of bit of TV work, but mostly his theories nobody knew what the hell he was on about. But his work revolutionized a lot of stuff, and he worked in Los Alamos doing work on the atomic bomb and what have you. And but again, he had the ability to talk to people and explain things in such terms that it was so easy to understand without actually knowing really what he was on about. And that's a rare gift. And I think Stephen Hawking had a similar thing where he could make his theories known quite simply. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you still really don't know anything about the subject, but you understand what he's on about.
And everybody loved him too.
Oh, of course, mm-hmm. Yeah. He was. I never really heard bad things said about him. Not even bad jokes or anything like that, or about his disability or whatever. He was always spoken with about with a lot of pride and a lot of admiration. Because he was British and because he was one of us, it was good that we had a scientist that was because every other scientist was either German or American or whatever. So this guy being one of us was phenomenal, and to be doing that out of a wheelchair and with a disease that was crippling his body, if not his mind, it was amazing.
And the fact that he lived 50 years longer than he was expected to.
That's right. He was the oldest living person with his condition. So it's and the will to carry on as well. I mean, he could have just given up and said, at any point he could have said, no, this is not for me. I can't do what I want to do and all that. But because his mind was still active, and he could still get his thoughts onto paper and do the work and get all his theories together. It obviously kept him going. But any lesser mortal, I think, would have
given up and just withered
Yeah.
away, faded into non-existence.
That's right. Well, and amazing, the support he had as well, the people around him who supported him. It is a 24-hour a day job, and it's always those the carers and all that, and his wife and his wives, the what they had to put up with, the day-to-day stuff.
Oh yeah.
Is phenomenal.
Yeah. So the meaning of life, I infer from Stephen Hawking, is just to keep living as long as you can and contributing as much as you're able, and just keep going until you can't anymore.
That's right, and then trying to discover life's mysteries.
Which is
that was his aim, wasn't it?
And that's what we're all here for, I think, too.
That's right. And if you ever discover what they are, let us know.
So I hope you enjoyed that episode. I had a great time recording it with my good buddy Paul. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or emotional outbursts that you'd like to bring to the attention of Soulforge Podcast, please feel free to email the show. You could tweet the show, join the Facebook page, make a comment, leave a review. However you do it, just get in touch with us. Let us know how you're doing. If you'd like to be on the show, that would be awesome. Always looking for new content. If you have a topic you'd like me to bring up, let me know. That would be awesome as well. It's also appreciated if you could share the link to the episode on your Facebook page or on your Twitter. Let people know that you're listening. Let's get a larger community going, get some feedback and dialogue and all that good stuff. But until next time, have a great day. And remember, your time as a caterpillar has expired. Your wings are ready. This has been another episode of the Soulforge Podcast. Contact the show by emailing soulforgepodcast@gmail.com or by tweeting soulforgepod on Twitter. Visit us at soulforgepodcast.com, and remember, the best way to show your support is by leaving a 5-star review in the iTunes Store. And, if you would, please check us out and like us on Facebook. The Soulforge Podcast was written, produced, scored, edited, engineered, and directed by Sean Vanderloo. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at Darth Vaderloo. For more great content, you can listen to my other podcast, The Rusted Robot. Thanks for stopping by the Forge. We'll keep the fires lit until your next visit.
I could do this all day.
This has been a Valley of Vanderloo podcast production, all rights reserved.
This transmission ends now.